Relics are really important on Eternal Fury 4.0. Here I'm going to talk about my favourites and some setups you can try out for various situations. Firstly, the main way to get relics is from the dragon egg. You can see it here. It's not always up though. It is in rotation with Dragon Tower and Bingo. So the relic available currently here is the Fang of Hell Dog. This is actually really good. It's one of those relics that gives an attack boost. This is why I have so many points here currently. What you want to do though is every time the dragon egg is up, check what relic is there. If it's one you need, consider using your amethyst to get it as high as possible. There's the rankings for this dragon egg. I am winning it as it's a really good relic. That's the main way. There is something else you could do as well to get relics. Let's go over to the Forge and the Recycle tab over here. You can recycle older relics and get relic shards. I'm not actually going to do this, but you can see here there's relic custom card shards available from me recycling the Death Sickle relic in the Forge. You can do this with both the relic cards and the relic shards, so if you get a bunch of cards or shards you don't need, you can easily recycle them here. Bear in mind the relics available from the custom card shards though are quite limited. It does have the Holy Grail though, and that's a really good relic. If you don't have Holy Grail max promotion yet, it's more than worthwhile to recycle relics you don't need until you max it out. Now onto the relics themselves. What I'm going to do here is talk through the ones that I think are useful and the ones I think you should avoid. Now I'm going to apologise in advance if I say any of the relic names wrong. Here's the first one, Skid Bladnir. This one is really good and highly recommended using. A 20% chance to trigger the Endless Breeze Banquet each round. At max promotion, this increases the back row allies' attack by 15% and the front row allies' defense by 15% for 2 rounds. Since the attack boost is the more useful skill out of the two, it makes sense to have your main hero on the back row. It's not a bad idea to put this relic on a hero as well. Since this skill affects all party members, it doesn't really matter who you equip the relic on. Putting it on a hero also gives you one more relic slot for your main character. For that reason, it may well be worth doing. Fang of Hell Dog, again very good. At max promotion, critical strikes have 40% chance to inflict Curse of Hell and increases 30% self-attack for 2 rounds. For that reason, must be equipped on your main character if you want the attack boost. Miss Tilton here, I know I said that wrong. This is great for bosses. Attacks have a 15% chance to deal double damage. Now that in itself is absolutely huge. It also removes a buff from the target if it activates. Definitely one you want to equip on your main character and try and max out as soon as possible. Dragonheart, another really good relic. At level 8 this increases 19% defense per enemy kill. This is really useful in raids or something like Endless Trial. Every time you defeat an enemy, that buff will stack up. It's similar with the Death Tome, but I think Death Tome is a much better relic. This increases attack rather than defense. At this level it's 45% attack per enemy kill, and that's absolutely huge. One thing to bear in mind is that it won't work on bosses like the Element Beasts or the Time Vortex bosses. You have to actually kill an enemy before the buff starts stacking. A good use for this is Endless Trial. Golden Apple, 15% chance to dispel all debuffs and restores 11% max health at this level. Could be useful on a tanky hero, but probably not something you will want on your main character. Holy Grail, this is another really good one. Blocks have a 40% chance to trigger Saint's Crusade, increasing all allies' attack by 22% for the round. Now you can use this on a hero since it's all allies' attacks. However, I would recommend using it on whichever of your characters has the best chance to get a block. In my instance, it's my main character. Definitely a good one though, as it increases attack, so one to consider, that's for sure. Death Sickle, 18% chance to trigger Doom and silence enemies for 2 rounds. This is definitely a PvP relic. Doom is quite annoying. Consider equipping this whenever you are playing PvP. Helm of Invisibility, 33% chance to restore health equal to 5% max health when dodging an attack. Not especially useful, probably something to equip on one of your heroes. Titan Blood, attacks have 15% chance to drain health equal to 25% of the damage dealt. Again, probably something to equip on a hero. Winged Shoes, 70% chance to increase speed by 10% each round. There's the occasional situation where you might need to get in the first turn, for example in a raid dungeon. Otherwise, this relic is kind of useless if I'm being honest. Thor's Hammer, attacks have 16% chance to call a Thunder Strike on an enemy. That deals direct damage. It's not as good as a relic that increases damage or attack. It may be worth considering against bosses though, just for the extra damage it deals. Mirror of Cunning, taking damage has a 6% chance to conjure a Twisted Nether, dodging the attack. You will need this at quite a high level, but that could be potentially useful against really difficult bosses if it activates. Ring of Devil, taking damage has a 12% chance to trigger Exorcist Seal, reducing attacker's crit rate by 17%. No, just forget it. This is basically the worst relic in the game in my opinion, so don't even bother with this one unless you have nothing else. Titan Spark, start of combat, for 3 rounds, fatal damage has a 25% chance to instead restore you 20% of maximum health. Once per combat, so what that means is if you die in the first 3 rounds of a battle, you will get revived. This could be useful in raids like Genesis Maze. Put a weaker party member at the front, give them this relic, then when they take a few hits they will be defeated. They get revived, that will give your bigger hitters a chance to kill the boss. Magic Lamp, I think this relic could potentially be really useful. It's underrated. 15% chance to gain one of the buffs each round. Crit rate plus 15%. Block rate plus 15%. Attack plus 10%. Now I know it's unlikely you will get the attack bonus, but if you do, it could be really useful. This is probably something to consider when you already have most of the other relics that you need. Twig of World Tree. Attacks have 10% chance to reduce enemy rage by 50. This is a PvP relic. Not overly exciting, but if you don't have anything else, maybe consider using this. Eld Hirimia. I said that completely wrong, you all know I did. Anyway, a 5% chance to trigger the Celestial Banquet when attacked, healing HP for 1 to 3 allies equal to 15% attack, plus 1500. So probably one to equip on a hero if you are going to use it. Then here are the ones I don't have yet. Venus Harp, critical strikes have 10% chance to stun, useful against harder bosses and probably in PvP. Not a massively exciting relic, but if the stun works, it could potentially be useful. Brizin Gaiman, a 10% chance to trigger the Fateful Blessing when attacked, just heals HP. Glepnir, critical strikes deal 10% additional damage to the enemies adjacent to the target. I can see this being useful in PvP and in raids where you need to attack more than one target. Not so useful against bosses though. Giala, a 10% chance each round to reduce all the enemies' crit rate by 5%. Not very exciting, wouldn't use that. Megging Jord, attacks have a 10% chance to reduce the target's defense and block by 10% for 2 rounds. Possibly something to use in PvP and if you are struggling with a boss. Then to finish we have Langrepia. Attacks have a 10% chance to reduce the target's defense by 20%, so seems like a better version of the previous relic. There we go, that's all the relics that are in the game currently. For the second part of this video, I'm going to talk through some setups I like to use. The first one is useful for raids like Endless Trial. I have the Holy Grail here. Blocks have a chance to trigger Saint's Crusade. That increases attack. Fang of Helldog increases self-attack, which is useful since you don't have heroes here. Then the third relic down here, the Death Tome. This is the key relic. This increases attack per enemy killed. Then finally, Skid Bladnir at the end. This increases attack for the back row and defense for the front row. Very useful again in Endless Trial and raids. Right, let's bring up a raid room. Let's get Endless Trial going. I'm playing this on Inferno and as a solo run. So here we go, let's see how I do. Right, this should be fun. What I'm going to do here though is skip ahead a bit. These earlier waves are quite boring to be honest, and I'm sure you don't want to see me do all of these. This is wave 40, I was able to defeat the boss in one hit. You can see there the Death Tome buff as well, increasing the attack per enemy kill. It's easily the most useful relic in the game for this raid. There we go, so next wave here. Let's get through this nice and quickly. So for this wave I'm going to use Furious Strike 3 times. I didn't quite have Crimson Blades ready. If I save it for the next wave, I can skip it. If I use it here though, I won't be able to. Hopefully that made sense anyway. So use Crimson Blades now. That skips the end boss and completes Endless Trial. There we go, some lovely super trial chests as well. Endless Trial done. So my next setup is for bosses, for example the Element Beast or the Cross Server boss. The setup I'm using here, firstly, I'm using the Holy Grail. This has that nice attack boost when you get a block. This is always a very nice relic to use. So I'm going to do the bosses solo, so Fang of Helldog is really useful here. This increases self-attack. Now moving on to Miss Tiltin. This has a chance to deal double damage with your attacks, so that makes it really, really good. Then finally Skid Bladnir here. Attack increase for back row, defense increase for front. So that I think is pretty much the optimal setup I have for bosses out of my relics. I will just bring up my formation. I'm on the back row. In Endless Trial I was on the front unfortunately. Right, anyway, let's bring up the Time Vortex page. Most players don't go near the easier bosses in Stage 2, so these are good for testing out setups. I have done my attempts for the day already. Right, let's go over to the boss. Let's see how effective this setup is. Right, so I need to get some buffs up. That's looking pretty good to start with. Let's try and get some nice damage on the boss. In theory, the more icons that appear, the more damage I should do with my attack. Obviously, other factors are taken into account as well here though. Now that 1000 Blades attack can do really good damage. It didn't on that previous attack though, unfortunately. Anyway, this shows my setup in action quite nicely. It is a pretty decent setup, however it does rely quite heavily on luck. When those buffs appear, the damage is normally higher, but not always unfortunately. Right, let's get 1000 Blades going again, my best attack. Well, I have been stunned. After the stun, right there we go, and it's defeated me now. Right, so now we're going to move on to a PvP setup. Let's bring up the relics. So for this I have Miss Tiltin again. That has that chance to deal double damage. One of my favourite relics in the game. Then for the next one we have Death Sickle. That has that annoying Doom debuff. Then for the next one we have Death Tome. That increases damage per enemy kill. The buff is normally obtained after defeating the enemy heroes. Then for the final relic we have Dragon Heart, similar to the Death Tome except for defense instead. There we go, that's my relic setup for PvP anyway. So over to the Colosseum, I want to find a target that's pretty similar in battle rating to myself. Mamba seems to fit that quite nicely. This should be quite good. I will be honest, I don't use this setup that much. It might not be optimal. The Death Sickle, for example, may be swapped out for another relic. It's still pretty useful though to test this out, just to see what it can do. Right, so what I want to do here is try and take out the enemy's heroes. That will give me buffs from both the Dragon Heart and the Death Tome, boosting me up significantly. Let's try and get Crimson Blades to take out as many heroes as possible on the enemy team. Hopefully it will anyway, let's see. PvP is really slow unfortunately. I rarely play the party ranked match due to how slow that is as well. Here we go, so you saw there I took out 4 of the heroes. Now I am buffed up quite a bit. This should make the battle relatively easy from here, but we will see. I still have 1 hero to defeat, as you can all see on the screen. Now something should happen, there we go, I managed to miss completely. That's the last hero defeated. Just Mamba to take down now. 1 good hit with 1000 Blades should do enough. Let's see though. Well, most of my heroes are gone, and there we go. Now, I know Yabu pretty much watches all of my EF content, so I'm going to try and fight him. This probably won't go very well if I'm being honest. I think it's going to be quite fun to try though. What's going to happen here is I'm going to die in 2 attacks at most. Let's find out anyway, here we go. Right, so if I can defeat any of Yabu's heroes, that will help a lot. Of course, I need to survive for long enough to make that happen. I can't guarantee that will. Anyway, it's looking pretty reasonable so far. Or in other words, it's not going as badly as I was expecting. Let's see what happens when I use my Crimson Blades attack. There we go, and well, I have taken out all of the heroes, believe it or not. Oh, wait a sec, I got reflective damage on Yabu. So if I mess around with this setup, I might eventually win, but it's going to take me a very, very long time. So I think it's time to end the video at this point. This has ended up as quite a long video. Hopefully you all enjoyed that though. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing is always very much appreciated. Check out a previous video on the screen. You can also subscribe from here if you want to do so. There's a playlist in the pinned comment with all my recent Eternal Fury videos in as well. And thanks for watching.